Bear with me, sorry. Mate, we'll get there, we're getting there, just 2 seconds.
Plus you're ready.
Ooh, something I need to do. Yeah. Sorry. There's been a lot of technical things to try and work out to make all of this work. You wouldn't believe. What? Yeah. Ooh. Hi, Sunil. How are you doing? I can see your chat, by the way. That part appears to be working, which is good. There's a lot of various technical... I can't even speak technologies that have... I'm trying to sort of put in play to make things work. And there might be a bit of a delay and things like this, but I hope that it will be reasonably interactive. Oh, it's 6 o'clock. That means it's time to start. I've got a webcam. You can see my face and everything. I don't care. Where are we? There we go. Hi! Oh God, what's with the... What is that? There's some kind of talking. Hello! How are we all doing? We all well? Evening. Where I am, I don't know where you are. In England it's 6 PM. I hope you're not on the southeastern side of the US, because the shit that's going down there looks pretty rubbish. As weather goes, you have my deepest sympathies if you live in that region, because it just seems awful. Well, it's a bit windy here. Not quite the same thing, so I don't want to trivialise the weather. So yes, I am available for you to abuse, generally annoy, or ask questions. That is also a thing that we can do, and kind of trial chatting, see what's occurring. I didn't get any questions from folks beforehand, so anything you're interested in. I actually, by the way, I also have my kind of big case that's got like the whole, well, everything else in it. So I've got my live system. My plan was to do a kind of Q&A and then for like half an hour, but if we don't even need that long, then I can just play. But I am able to answer any questions, or I can just talk. I can talk at you, just tell you things, whether you want to know them or not. Thank you, by the way, Sunil. I am also hoping for a happy wedded life. Yeah, it is. I'm getting married at the end of the week technically getting married on Friday, and then sort of, well, legally getting married on Friday, and then getting married in a kind of more spiritual, groovy way on Sunday. So it's, yeah, it's a bit of a big step. And actually, funnily enough, I saw DivKid he's having a baby. He's having a baby this week as well. So I think in the world of like modular video makers, it's just like a time of transition and change, it seems. Certainly is for me. Although, you know, me and my missus, as she is, we've been going out for 8 years, 9 years, so it's a bit of a, frankly, it's not really like that much of a change. Although a legal one. Plus, I'll have another ring, which is quite good, so the old, I think I'll probably still wear the silver one, but I'll have a gold one, obviously. So look out for that. Yes. Oh, that is a good shout. Yeah, Analog Industries, Analog Analogies, sorry. Yeah, the D05. I am actually genuinely pretty excited about that. And I don't know how it is for you, but I don't know the D50 that well. I don't have a D50. You possibly can't see. You can probably see my amps. You can see like the worst part of my room, which is like the boxes of modular, where I don't look up in there, but that's where the webcam's going. Anyway, but like perhaps if I turn this, you can see I've got like a whole stack of stuff, including the Juno. I've got obviously the Peak, the DX7 FZ1, and the CS2X. So I've kind of got some older stuff. Plus I've got in the rack over there like a TG77, but I never played around with the D50. And it seems, from what I can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems quite similar to the JV sort of range. And I've got a JV 1080 where it's like 4 kind of wavetables and like envelopes, filters to filter those wavetables. It seems really powerful. It's just, I think I agree with folks who said it's a bit of a shame they haven't kind of expanded the editability aspect, because it's just, you know, it is literally the same as a D50 or harder. I don't know if there's more control on the physical machine because it's obviously tiny, but it sounds wicked, doesn't it? Have you been watching the Lego Welt video? Because those ones, the sounds that he gets out of that, I'm just like, I just love that. I love wavetables. I love polysynths. I like weird digital stuff that a lot of people don't like, just because I think it's cheaper gear and it's really interesting. It's more interesting than any of the analog stuff, frankly. So I think it's great. And hats off to Roland. I mean, they've really, I think the boutique thing all round is pretty great. To be honest, though, I did try the boutique SEO through, what is it, SEO 2, the Mini Mogi one. And I didn't love it, just because, I mean, it sounded really good. And I know that everything that those guys that Studio Electronics does sound amazing. But just the ergonomics, it would piss me off if I had to use it every day. Do you know what I mean? And especially if you've played around with a real Mini Moog, which is big and usable. Yeah. Oh yeah, so yeah, they are cheesy sounds. So Neil, you are absolutely right. It is kind of like, that is the thing, like the D50's presets, it's like Enya. So it's as cheeseball as it gets. But you should never judge a machine by its presets, because, you know, listen to the Lego Welt sounds. Like what he was doing is just super vibey and interesting and full of character, and it almost sounds analog. It's analog modeling in a sense, because it's got analog style filters, but there's some amazing sounds, and it's just more interesting. It's not to say it will be the only synth that you would have, but I think you definitely don't want to write it off. You should try and get hold of one and play. I am wearing a sub pack, yes. We should talk about like that, and it's yeah, I have the JP08 as well, and I actually really like the ergonomics of the JP08, but I don't know, yeah, the D50 would be a penis to program. However, it does work with the PGE 1000, and I imagine it works with all of the iPad apps and other associated MIDI editors. It's got the exact same MIDI protocol. But yeah, I am wearing a sub pack, and that is because I can't hear under 1,000 hertz. I found that out recently. It's a unique problem to myself, but my hearing is kind of weird. I was born with a cleft palate, and that basically means where you've got a hole in the roof of your mouth. I had a hole in my head when I was born, and that problem can lead to inner ear issues later in life. And long story short, it has, and it means my eardrums are like under tension, and basically they don't translate bass through to my cochlea. So under 1,000 hertz, it like tails off like a 6 dB curve and just disappears. So I can't hear low end. So I bought a sub pack because I was like, this is shit. But the sub pack's amazing because it does, you know what it is. It's obviously, it vibrates and it gives you that kind of vibe. But I've got to say, it's good. And it's actually really fun. Whether or not you have hearing problems, you can't hear it. It is quite fun because it's just like when an 808 kick drum kind of booms, you really like feel it. Boom. You can't feel that, but I can feel that. It sounds pretty good. Yes. How do I use a sequential switch to change patterns? We could maybe go over here, but just I can explain briefly. But it literally is just this idea that it's like a junction box. You maybe saw on that generative video, but it allows. The weird thing about the sequential switch is, like a multiple, there is not necessarily, the ins are not necessarily ins, the outs are not necessarily outs. But on a sequential switch, you can basically have 4 things going to one destination, and you use a voltage to pick where the 4 things are coming from. Or you can have 1 thing to 4 places, and you use a voltage to pick where the 4 places are going. So the whole thing of changing patterns is literally you just put one pattern into one of the inputs as a sequential switch, another into the other, you ignore the other 2 or whatever you've got, and then just use a voltage to switch between those 2. So, and then you send that output, the one output, to your 1 volt per octave input. So you're then choosing from 2 inputs. But the cool thing is that you can do that at audio rates as well. So you could put different waveforms in and blaze between them at audio rate, and then you would end up with new waveforms and stuff. So it's sequential switches are great because they're not like filters and oscillators. People maybe don't realize what they're good for, but you just get one, especially the Dope one, because it's cheap. It is cheap. Yes. I haven't tried to Paul. I haven't actually tried the. I tried the TR9 very briefly, saying the knobs are really small. Yeah, they are quite tiny. But actually, weirdly, specifically on the TR08, aren't the 808 knobs actually the same size as a real 808? Like a real 808's knobs are actually only little pot shafts, on a Chemy's Castle or something like that. But yeah, it does kind of suck, I think, the boutique form factor in a way. By compressing it, they haven't made it more usable. There's no question. The TR08, the big TR08 is more usable, but I don't know. I have to say the aesthetics of the TR08 pretty hot. I really want one of those because it just looks awesome. Yes, Kazis. Am I saying that right? Kazis Vanelis. Please ask your question. I am right for questions. You've obviously you found your live chat. Yes, I need to go to Elevator Sound in Bristol actually, and I've sort of spoken to those guys briefly. That's pretty badass. There are a few 909s signed by Jeff Mills in the wild as well. The guy's a don, and it's a good example of you don't need a lot of stuff to play amazing shows, do you? Look at all this ridiculousness. In fairness, I've only got kind of 1 drum machine in here, but he's a good example that you don't need a lot to do a lot. It's just, and actually, one of the best things is just understanding the stuff you do have. I know that's blindingly obvious, but he's been rocking that 1909 for decades and still sounds amazing doing it. Yes, Kazis, please go ahead with your question, and I will endeavour to answer. Sorry, you did go ahead with your question. So the question is, in case you can't see this, when you have a composition, at what point do you feel you have enough patches? Sometimes when I'm making a composition, more patches and more modulation seems to lead to a total mess. Yes. Are you saying that are you actually producing live, for example, or are you just setting up a sound and then recording it and then setting up another sound simultaneously? Because it depends, with all of this stuff, using modular to actually write music live, I think is really hard, unless you actually just do the live thing like this and actually just jam out. actually using it for sound design, I mean, I think almost in a way, you have to sort of apply the same restrictions that you would apply with equipment, and I would, depending on how well you know the system, I think it could be dangerous to like patch and repatch during the process of making, you know, a song. It depends. I mean, it does depend what you're trying to do. So please do explain more about like your workflow. But what I'm sort of getting at is that I've always struggled when I actually, ironically, use my modular to make music on the computer, particularly. So like, I make loads of music using Ableton Live. Like this album that I'm about to release is pretty much all just Ableton Live. But to be brutally honest, basically none of it is done on the modular, because I actually do find it really kind of rabbit holey to get into sound design at the point that I'm trying to write the tunes. I actually end up writing, I much prefer to write really quickly and use more simple sounds than go down this sound design rabbit hole. Because I think you can just tie yourself in knots. Like you massively affect your productivity. And there is this whole argument that like a good way of working would be to basically not do sound design when you should be writing. As in, like, if what you should be doing is kind of putting together a demo, then do that and just use some basic sounds to do that, and then do your sound design later once you've nailed the core song. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a, like, that only kind of works for certain types of music, because obviously the beauty of electronic music is that it could be anything, and that it could just be, you know, the sound design is the song. So you can't separate the two, and obviously that's fair enough. I just thought it was interesting. There's like a Vince Clarke quote where he talks about using electric guitar. He like literally, I write the song on an electric guitar, and then he goes into his room that's got every synth known to man, and then does sound design. But he separates the process. I know that Zoe Blade as well, like another Patreoner and musician, she does the same thing. She separates writing from sound design. Sorry, I'm just reading your updates. So yeah, so you're saying, well, yeah, I've seen live performances that seem to be done on the fly. My own interests are much more generative and less melodic. Yeah, it just depends. Like, I mean, what I'm doing here is what I've almost, it's almost been a reaction to what we're talking about, this idea of just getting tied in knots with modular, and my solution to that has been do this and just like only make music with a modular if you're going to use a modular to make music. But it's not to say that you can't do it. My problem is I'm just not that disciplined, to be honest with you. It's like if you've got the discipline and you're, you know, you know what sound the key being you know what sound you want, then if you know your system well enough, you can just go bang, there's that sound, or I'll be led a little bit, but you've got an eye on the clock because you know that, you know, you just want to lose the kind of urgency of making music, and that's been my issue. Like, honestly, like that's why I don't tend to use modular, because I feel that it's too easy to get absorbed in sound design. Yes. In your generative video, you mentioned, this is Paul, you mentioned getting the patch to influence itself. Can you give an example? Ooh, that is a good question. I mean, you can. To be honest, with like random modules is usually the best answer to that. Yeah, I don't know. Get two Turing machines, for example, and having like, you notice that VCA patch where it's basically using the output of one Turing machine to scale the output of the other. But you could. Yeah, you could feed things back into themselves. I mean, you can do that with filtration, obviously, as well. What could you do? Yeah, I mean, God, it's a million things. But I would play around with, yeah, squishing the like range of a sequence used with two Turing machines is really fun. But you kind of do need two, just because then you've got randomness influencing randomness, if that makes sense. Sorry, I am looking through your questions. So Brian asks, do you find yourself doing more generative jamming versus traditional a priori planning? Good good wording there, a priori. Yeah, I do more jamming. I don't, depends, like, what I'll do is I'll set up the big modular and then jam, basically. It's for me, what I don't do is I don't do any like super complex sound design, or it might seem like I do. I don't. I actually set up my modular in a really dumb way, and in a really simple way. And what I'm trying to do is effectively turn my modular into a groove box. So I definitely just set up conditions, or it's more like I've built a groove box. It's like I've built the best Roland MC303 ever, and then I jam on it. That is what I do. And I think, and as we were saying before, it's kind of feeds into the same thing. I've just found that's like the best expression, or the most, what's the word? Just like authentic way of using the modular for me. It speaks to the things that I love the modular for. It's like, it does sound great, but it's just really interesting how you can set up these, this music system. The problem with that is just there's obviously this big, it's a milestone to build a system that's big enough to do that with. But if you augment it with like BeatStep Pro and things like this, just to give yourself hands-on sequencing without needing loads of modules to do it, it is, for me, it's the best thing about the whole format. It's the thing that kind of keeps me going, and it's basically what I set up to do. But just one of a million different things you could do with a modular. You don't have to be into groove boxes. And as Sunil, as you're saying, that you find it hard to sort of you do just modular or just hardware, and it's hard to marry the two. That is exactly my problem as well. I do struggle to marry the two. But it could be done. What was I thinking about? We were talking with someone else the other day. Someone was talking about, it was another commenter who was basically saying how, should I get into modular to build a groove box? And I was almost saying what would be maybe for me a better way into the modular thing is just buy sequences, modular sequencing, like sequential switches and some of the nutty, more interesting stuff, and then buy CV to MIDI adapters, and then actually just use like a D50 boutique, or like Volkers and old rubbish kind of digital synths to actually generate the sounds. Like, don't do the sound generation in modular, only do the sequencing, because for me personally the sequencing stuff has been the most interesting aspect of it. So it's, I would definitely recommend that. And that's just building a groove box again. It's just that it's really expensive to do all the sound generation in the system. And if there was only one aspect I would say is the one that's most worth spending money on, it's the sequencing stuff. Use like your boutique to do the sound generation. It's much cheaper. Heinz Muller asks, have you ever felt like buying a modular synth was a bad investment? That's an excellent question. Well, as I was saying earlier, I haven't made a lot of music with it, honestly. I've ended up using it as part of the song making process, but frankly, if we're talking money's worth, well, no, like, it is a terrible investment, to be brutally honest. But I'm a little bit of a different case, because I have gotten down the rabbit hole of like, making videos and things like that. So this whole like video making aspect is, to be honest, a big distraction from actually like making music. And the most musical thing that I've done is building this jamming system. That's genuinely been the best aspect. And I don't feel that building something like this is a bad investment at all. It's just difficult because you really want to try everything and see how you go. But I can completely, I would say, if you're not disciplined and you're not sure why you're getting into modular, it's a terrible investment, because you just see, those posts that people put on Facebook where they're like, here's a picture of my modular grid, here's a picture on modular grid of my system. What am I missing? I do find those I find it's a worrying trend, because if you don't know what you're missing, then you don't know why you've got a modular synth. And that's the danger, is that if you get into it without knowing why you're doing it, then you just hemorrhage a load of money and you don't actually buy anything useful. You're not because you need a purpose. So it's this whole thing for me has been, this system has kind of almost reinvigorated my love of Eurorack genuinely, because I've been making lots of videos, but not, as I say, making a lot of music. But this is only for making music, and it's really gratifying and fun, and it's done away with any of those kind of the temptation to post things like, you know, what do I need next, because I've got a purpose. So all I would say is it's a bad investment if you don't have a purpose, and if you've got a purpose, then, as you know, there's like so many modules that you just have to know what you want to do. Oh, I want to have you know, it helps to have some inkling. If you say I want an interesting sequencer or something like that, then there's lots of ways through. But, you know, if you said I want to play around with 2-operator FM and sequencing, well, there are modules that you could suggest, and then you're off, and you could build your dream music making box. So Casey Barth asks, hey Milo, hey Casey, have you ever worked with the Haken Continuum as a controller for modular? What has been your favourite expressive controller or any way for manipulating your rig? That is an excellent question, and the answer is I have fondled a Haken Continuum at NAMM, and I've seen some people who are really skilled on it, and I've played on the what is it called, the wetsuit keyboard, the pushy wetsuit, you know the one, the pushy wetsuit. What is it called? Oh, God, I can't think of it. Pushy wetsuit keyboard, which is good, and those are super expressive, but I'm not a player, is the problem. I can't really play the keyboard, so for me, you know, I need dials, and so I don't have the physical ability to use those things because I don't have keyboard ability. However, there is something else I should show you, which I have, bear with, and which you may recognise, which is this thing, the Touché from Expressive E. It's a little bit dusty, and that's in all honesty, so I haven't been using it loads with my system yet. But I have one of these things, and this is a very, very cool device. And this is, by the way, because my work, the place I work, we work with these guys as well. So, but I went to Sonic State Monday, and there's a video upcoming where you can see Arthur from Expressive E using one of these things. And I bring it up because it's got 4 CV outputs, and this is basically the kind of touch controller that would be useful to me, because it's effectively like a 4-dimensional touch controller, but it is just outputting voltages, and it's not a keyboard, so you don't have to be able to play the keyboard to get something from it. You can just basically have that to the side of your modular, and then by pushing, you know, up and down on the device and moving from side to side, it generates 4 lanes of CV, and it's really clever when you see the software. You know, the CV can be positive or negative 5 volts, it can be 0 to 10 volts, and you can also like scale all of the outputs, so you can almost create like gate patterns and stuff, so you can have like gates that occur when you just tap these to the right. Really cool, and that is actually the kind of touch controller that would be useful to me as a person who can't really play. I haven't there isn't a Windows editor for it yet, so I haven't integrated it with my system, but I'd quite like to just have it here to the left-hand side as a way of just kind of controlling a bunch of sounds, like you could just control the filters. I have some modulation set up into the Jove as a standard thing, and I think if you had that too, you'd just be able to add this extra dimension. But watch that Sonic State video when it comes out, because Arthur's a dude, he can really, really play the keyboard, and when you kind of see the keyboard and that thing being applied, it's friggin' amazing. It's really interesting, and what's nice about it is it doesn't require you get rid of anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got a Haken Continuum, you'd feel a bit sad that you've got loads of keyboards. It's like, shit, now I don't need to play the, you know, I've learned, you know, I've spent 15 years learning to play the keyboard, although I'm sure that knowledge transfers. This is a bit different because it just works with your existing stuff. So yes. Sorry, yes, Roly Seaboard, thank you very much, by the way, Paul, Casey, that is very true. Maybe that's why they call it the Seaboard, because it's like made of wetsuits. But it is a bit wetsuity. It's weird, like it's amazing. But you really want something that, like, I imagine the Peak's amazing. I think the Peak does respond to polyphonic aftertouch. If you had the Roly, I mean, like, you know, you'd probably be able to get some very kind of CS80 like vibes out of the thing. But yes, yeah, no, thank you, Jason, and please check out that Expressive E thing. I think that, like, obviously we're bringing it into the UK, but they've been around for a year or two, but they've only just launched the product in like the last 5 months, 6 months, so it's only really been available for sale. But yeah, watch the Sonic State thing, because I think you will approve basically what it can let you do. So Casey asks, thank you you were bigging up the Peak videos. Thank you very much. And have I been composing more on it? And the answer is yes, I have. Which, just to reinforce what I was saying earlier, the recent album thing. So if you look back, I don't know if you've seen it, but please have a listen to like the preview that I sent. But I'm having it professionally mastered by my friend Paul Levine at the moment, and on that album there's loads of Peak, because it's a couple of new things that basically, those new tracks, I was like, I should just get this shit out there. I should just stop talking about getting it out there and just put it out there. So there's actually a load of Peak on the new album, when there's, I'm afraid, not very much modular, and I've only had the Peak for about 2 months and I've had the modular for 6 years. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. Although I was going to say, I am, you know, playing around today is a good example of reminding me that my next step is to do like an EP using this, just jamming on this system, and then multi-tracking it. Over here I've got the you know, the Expert Sleepers EF, so I've got, you know, 8 ins, and then what I was going to do is just track out from here. Although I do have a mixer. I've got my like Mackie. I haven't got direct outs on the Mackie. Do you know what I mean? What I wanted to do was just basically mix live, but retain every separate channel. So I think probably what I'm going to have to do is set up a little bit of a jury rig thing, where I have, you know, all of the outs of the Akemis, the braids, the drums, and various bits and bobs, and then send them separately into Ableton Live via the ES, and then just use a MIDI fader board or something like that to do the mixing live. And that way you can kind of jam, because you've got to be able to jam and apply effects, but keep everything separate so that I can do a final mix down. Because like I said, I mentioned that on the Cymru Beats thing, but I was quite inspired by Justin from Abstract Data, who used just a really basic system and has made some really cool techno, like this Jack Patch thing. Please check it out. It is his Jack Patch thing sounds awesome, and it's just simple, minimal techno if you're into that sort of thing. But he's just done it on a basic Abstract Data system, and he just multi-tracked and then did it in stages. So I think he really, I found that inspiring, because I was like, shit, I've got a live system, I should do that. Like, do you know what I mean? But you have to keep everything separate, I think. Yeah, you do. I have, in fairness, I've done a couple of jams where I just literally mixed down to mono, but it's only for the brave. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially, as you know, this is completely random. You never know what's going to happen. And if you come up with something amazing and then you really badly mix it, and especially with my ears, I think I'd be a fucking idiot if I didn't keep things separate, because I'm only going to mess it up. So yeah, and yes, I am quite. I think that EP thing will be next. So it's good, like today, to come and just play around a bit. Obviously, this month is going to be a bit of a write-off, because literally from Tuesday I'm gone back up to Yorkshire, and then we're going to Italy. If anyone knows Italy, please let me know somewhere nice to go, or any kind of synthy sound. We won't be able to do anything synthy. She would kill me. She's like, we're going to Italy to get away from the synthesizers. So don't go be finding like some Italian Euro rack manufacturer and like having a look around. She'd kill me. So, cool. So I kind of said we would do about half an hour of questions and then play around. If anyone has any more questions, now is an excellent time to ask them. Alternatively, I have got the big system over here. If there's any questions about the big modular, which if I can show you, I'll try and show you without damaging the cable, because before I literally tore my HDMI cable apart, which that was clever. And I had to run to Maplins and buy one. But this thing, you know, the big system, look, I've got Black Maths. It's so cool. And Black Echophone, which is just so hot. Super hot. So I will, but yes, let me know if there's any cues. If not, Heinz asks, have you ever experimented with Max MSP? No, I haven't. But I am interested to, because I know that Autechre use Max MSP. And actually, I'm genuinely, the thing that interests me about Max MSP, and tell me if it's the same, because if you know more about it than I do, you'll probably know more how to kind of play around with it, but is the sequencing aspect. Like being able to create like generative kind of live sequencing systems. I would have thought Max MSP is like the holy grail, because I'm fairly sure, like I saw Autechre play in Brighton, actually, funnily enough, at that show. I'm like stood there and it's like Russell Haswell, who's modular, and then with him is Matthew from ALM Busy Circuits. I'm like, oh, hello, Matthew. And then I saw Steve from Thonk as well, so it's like the whole modular massive came out to that show. But Autechre play with Max MSP live, and I think just use basic controllers. I'm fairly sure on that show they weren't, or maybe they used the Electron stuff, but they're like brilliant example of creating a kind of groove box, but they do it in software. It's something I did like in a few months there will be like a podcast thing with a guy called Midiera, and we were chatting in here about that, basically this idea that I don't think there's any reason why a person couldn't set up an amazing software groove box. And in a way it almost feels like there's a sort of missed opportunity, like some company should make a software jamming box where it's like the software does all the generative, interesting stuff that we're all buying modular to like play around with, but what is required is that you just have to have like a 16 knobby MIDI knobby box that you assign controls to. Do you know what I mean? As in, so you could have software that just does all this stuff, and then you could have like basic knobby controls to like control it. Same with reactor blocks. Like you could design an amazing sequencing modular and then assign some basic macro controls, like where turning one dial would do like 15 different things. I feel like there's a load of missed opportunities to create interesting software sequencing that has a hardware front end, but no one seems to be playing around with it. I wonder if Eurorack will inspire people to do it. Daxton Fleming asked, have I retired Metropolis? Oh, it's not plugged in. No, I have not retired Metropolis at all. In fact, I've been like pissing and moaning to myself that I haven't got space to plug it in. And the only reason it's not plugged in is because I've got a bunch of videos that will be coming out later about things like the Copper Traces Seek and some other bits and bobs. And to do those, I've had to take this out of the case. So the answer is absolutely not. I love it, and actually I would love to get it into my live case, but I have logistic problems because I've kind of decided that I don't need more space, well, I shouldn't have more space, and I should be like Surgeon and be like, you know, if you you know, what he said was, in fact, it's an elevator. If you haven't seen this, there's an elevator sound video where he does a whole talk for 40 minutes. And he says that he's like, I have a limited amount of space, and if I want to change something, then something else has to come out. And I was like, you've got discipline, man. That's what it's all about. Casey asks, favorite sampling module. Very interested in the Morphogene and radio music. What do you like to use for what? That is a good question, because I think a lot of people are trying to compare Morphogene and clouds and radio music. And having tried all three, Morphogene, the thing that I found quite hard about Morphogene, to be brutally honest, was that when I started out, I kind of thought it was like a one-shot sampler and sort of time stretcher that I could kind of like bend to my will, if that makes sense. But what I learned about Morphogene is that I had to bend to its will. So the Morphogene really is like a tape machine and a kind of, it's like a tape machine. It's like a tape lab in a module. And it's not an Akai S950. It really is like a tape machine. And that creates different sort of possibilities. You know, it is amazing in terms of what it can do. But what I would probably want to use the Morphogene for is like almost a compositional tool. Like I would want to write a track with the Morphogene exclusively, almost, and I almost wouldn't use something else, if you know what I mean. And then with the clouds, I feel like the clouds really is an element that would be part of a composition. So like I'm using it here, clouds can be used a lot more like a one-shot kind of pitch it up, pitch it down. I feel it's a lot easier to make it fit into a composition, basically. And I feel with Morphogene, you have to fit your composition to that. And that's not bad, is not me saying anything bad about it, honestly, because it's just different. And then obviously radio music is it's just going to play back sounds, and it's also kind of a one-shot, but I feel like radio music is best when you pair it with something like clouds or Morphogene. So you'd want one of those if you were going to get either of those, basically, if that makes sense. But they're very different. They're not all the same, and it would totally be okay to get both, that whole thing. Yes. A Baron says Beat Machine 2020 does this somewhat. It's pretty dope. Is that a Super Collider thing or a Max MSP? If so, please send me a link to that, because I would definitely like to check it out. And Audio Neuromancer, or is it not Neuromancer? Yeah, you're saying Tim Exile has basically created his own Groovebox in React. Exactly that. Yeah, basically. What I'm saying is, why do we not have Tim Exile's system? Like, why? I suppose Tim isn't going to give that away. It's the thing, because it's literally his career. You know, and I actually have thought that, like, showing off this system, even though I'm not doing anything clever, it's like, oh, hey, you know, someone could just buy all the modules and then do the same thing. And then the reality is, that is an interesting question. But no, of course they couldn't, because it's you who makes the music. It's not the system. So yeah, and as Kazis, yes, I would definitely like to do the Metropolis video that I want to do, like the sequel, is I want 2 Metropolises, 2. That would be badass. So I could do the like impression of those old Rick M185 videos where he's got 2, and they just sound so good. But I want the Drum Doctor as well. I want that punchy electro drums as well. I will do that, A Baron. Thank you. You were saying just Google Beat Machine 2020. Note to self, remember Beat Machine 2020. So I am thinking we could play around a little bit and make some music. If anyone has got any more questions, please ask. Please ask now, or forever hold your peas. Cheers. And to be fair, it's been a little while since I played with this. Oh, I've been playing around today, but I have. I may be a little bit rusty, which is good, right? So I'll probably talk about what I'm doing. I am recording this all separate, by the way. So that is one of the perks of my my system that I've set up today, is I'm actually able to record stuff separately. But I did say I would play for an hour, which is a hell of a long time. I don't expect you all to sit through it, but I think that is a good challenge, because yeah, it's like most techno sets are an hour. And actually, if you're in England, there is a set. Actually, there's 2 things to point out, one of which has nothing to do with me, but I noticed that the guys at London Modular are doing live shows at Pickle Factory. There's one October the 8th, which is the day after Synthfest. If any of you are in the United Kingdom, excuse me, come to Synthfest, which is in Sheffield, because I will be there and showing stuff. But the next day, that in London, that show is going to be killer. They're doing a live 6-hour improv modular show with DMX Crew, which is just cool as hell. Like, DMX Crew is just such a dude, and I've seen him do live patching before, and he's funky as hell, like super cool. And so I am going to that show. But the other one was I'm actually playing in November in Morecambe, which, if any of you are familiar with the United Kingdom, Morecambe is basically a shithole. It's a shitty northern town. But a friend of mine is basically putting on a night. He lives there. He's putting on a really big night, hiring a bunch of people, DJ Hype, and other folks to play. And he has invited me to come and close out one of the rooms, do modular techno for an hour. So that's why I need to play for an hour to prove that I can do it. So I'm going to set a timer for 59 minutes. I'm going to play. If you have questions, I will continue to answer them as best I can. Hi, Dysonant. You're right, mate. And Jesse, no, I haven't got any more opinions about the mults and stacking voltages. I think it's fine because I haven't broken anything so far. And like I say, if Stevio does it, I think it's fine. I think most modules have protected inputs. But what I found generally, especially with the system using it, is I actually don't blend that much stuff. I'll blend maybe 2 things, but I've kind of set it up so that it's not, in fact, I could blend 3 things. I've got circadian rhythms, trigger eye, and grids, but I tend not to because it just gets way on you. So to be honest, I've not done it massively. It's been the answer. And I found that in reality, when you actually build a jamming system, you don't really need to blend that many things. You don't want to, because the biggest thing is just not making things too difficult for yourself. You want to make it easy. So, Dyson, you have missed the first bit, mate. But ask a question. Now's the time. Otherwise, I'm gonna start playing, and then it's tea time in the United Kingdom, and Rachel is making pies, and I don't want to miss the pie because there's like steak pie, and I'm a big fan of pie. Love a pie. I mean, like a meat pie. I don't know what they're called in the States. If there's a different technical name, can't say words. Can't say words anymore. Can't say words. Meat pie. A nice meat pie. Yeah, exactly. Pie is fruit. Pie is not fruit. Pie is meat. We just don't really do cherry pies, and I've given up sugar as well, so I can't eat cherry pies. Sucks to be me. This is me in the clouds. Originally, what did I have there? I didn't have anything, didn't I? Oh, so originally I was using the radio music as my source for clouds, but just while I'm here, I've sort of disconnected it for a while, so radio music's not doing anything. Because I discovered, basically I was playing this show in the north, well, playing a show. It was like a kids show with me and DivKid, which was super fun. Showing 5-year-old kids how to use a Eurorack modular is possibly one of the funnest things I've ever done. And like, not to diss adults, I'm an adult, we all suck obviously, but doing shows like where you're showing adults how a modular synth works is not as fun as with a kid. Like, kids are amazing and they totally get it, and they also try loads of weird shit that you would never do. Like, they're just making mad patterns on the circadian rhythms that just look like, you know, zigzags, but which sounded amazing. And there's one thing that kids love, and that's processing their voices. So I set up the A119 so that I could process my voice into the system, and that's when I did the Morphogene video when I was up north. Up north. Up north. Up north. Oh, I've got freeze on. Hi. 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 Because it's quite good being able to sing. So, yes, A119 is the module, by the way, that I'm using. The dope for A119 external input, which is alright. The microphone is a Samson S2 that I've had since I was 16 years old, which is fine. It's a bit dark. Dark. And I have got the PEQ1, which is the ALM module, which is like a little, based on like the Tascam EQ. It's over there. And that does help, but I haven't got space for it in the case because space is limited. But yeah, so let's play. Let's play. Feel free to just blurt questions out, by the way. If I see them, I will endeavour to answer them, and it won't spoil the final recording, because I'm recording it separately. Let's go. Let's go. He says. Haven't put the white knobs on the Echophone yet, the Adverb yet. How does this all work? The fuck is all this? Also note my trim module 2HP. I've got a few 2HP things. I'm going to put it in the case. Like Goose from Top Gun, but I'm not. But you can be my wingman any day, Sunil. Two being blended. Grids and hats. Listening to a lot of electro, so let's see if we can sort of let electro be the keyword. Also, he's watching, but one of my dear patrons has a $10 request coming to talk about electro, so this isn't it, but this is good practice for it. We're only at like 72 BPM as well. is quite dubby. Snare is Mutant Snare, which has got some randomness going into the cutoff, which makes it do the whole like kind of weird. Which I think, oh, it's, of course, it's coming from the Turing machine here. That's applying randomness. Oop. You maybe can't feel this, but I can feel it. Meat Pie Manifesto. I'll take that. I think that's good. Keeping it electro. It's a good thing I'm in the dark most of the time when I play, because you can see me, I look like a fucking dickhead when I'm playing. All that, it's just my hands. It saves me a lot of embarrassment, but I'm prepared to embarrass myself in front of you all. Oh, I fucked it. Melody is
Z8000 being driven by the Trigger Riot. Like I said, I genuinely would like to get Metropolis on it, but just wanted to try this. You can get 2 sequences out of it, which is what I'm doing at the moment. And then what I'll do is I'll clear this and then reset. So can you see this is resetting now? Because the bottom row sets a reset. Quantized, yes, by the Intuitive. So I just blended in the chord side of Akemi's Castle, output A, because the Jove's got 2 inputs.
Which is not.
What? Ooh. Button's a bit fucked. Jesus, Sunil, if you're driving, don't look at the screen, don't dive. You can always watch again. And I am not responsible for your death. Give my best to your in-laws, by the way.
Ow.
Next Sunday will be a problem, Paul. I'll be a bit busy. Ooh. Ow. Oh yeah. Shit, sorry. Join Jam. If you were truly on point, Paul, you'd have said, are you using rings? I'm not using rings. D50-ish, mid-90s drum and bass. Well, pathing, channeling Massive Attack vibes. I've got a major claim to fame behind me, which is my JV-1080 used to belong to Massive Attack. And my JV-1080, literally the one that I made, or the one that I have, made the harpsichord sound on Teardrop. I have the exact unit that made that, which is like fucking electronic music history. It's amazing. And it's also got all of, like, it's fully stocked with cards. There's like loads of the like Asia and sort of other cards in it, which are quite expensive. They did a really nice price. It's my brag. Everyone have a little breath. Everyone drink some water. Oh, mate, you've had too many pills. Chill out. Let's see if I can make this work. This is not working. Come on. Oh, that'll be why. It'd be appropriate to use ring, wouldn't it? I think we have to use ring. These are the things that amuse me that I can only share when I've got some fellow nerds with me. Yes, everything is going into the hex mixer, just a mono out. This will be a bit of a challenging one to do on a dance floor. Or maybe not. What's going on here? Not the slickest, but it'll do. Oh, well done now. Don't normally have a microphone there, sorry about that. God, slick, eh? idea where this is going. The response of the Z2040 is a little weird in this system. I don't know if it's the pip slope. It might be. I'm so used to like the curves of the maths, I struggle with it. Well, on a big system I'd be relying on the volume to do all of the sounding good aspect here. My back has just turned into chaos. Kind of full on. Kind of one of those situations where I almost would like a high pass filter in the path of certain elements just to leave some space for everything else. It's so easy to overdo things. module is Jove, which I'm just doing a video of. Oh, sorry, yeah. This is a verb. That is Jove, the filter. Yes. Yeah. Got to finish a Jove video either tonight or tomorrow. Yeah. No, this is a 2 HP amp module, which could go in here, in fairness. I've just not screwed it in yet. I'm using it to send voltages to the IA. Excuse me. To answer your question, Jack, I do sometimes miss samplers, and I've talked to friends of mine who make modules about making a Akai S612 style sampler for this system, which I would friggin' love. But it hasn't happened yet. Why is that not working? Stereo triggered sampler I've not really looked at, to be honest, but I tell you, the stereo, whatever it's called, the DLD, the dual looping delay, that is supposed to be amazing. I would love to try and shoehorn it in. Because that thing is supposed to be amazing, according to DivKid actually. He raves about it. and I've not really spent a lot of time with it, to be honest. Line between nailing something and ruining it. Done it again. Idiot. I thought position was pitch. Nailed it. Nailed it. Yes, I am Paul's wife. I am, comma, Paul's wife. I'm not your wife. My wife! Time we on? Jesus, 20 minutes to go. Well, I did say it will be an hour and a half in total. We talked for longer. Tea is ready. Nah, fuck it, we'll carry on. Something relaxing. Maybe I'll slow things down. Oh shit, he's still dancing.
got to be able to carry on no matter what. So it's a good experiment. There's some sounds in there that I'm not making. I don't know where they are.
Something's gone very weird.
Come on. Nope.
That's better. My timings have gone weird. It. Yeah. No. CLX, mate.
This is relaxing. I thought we were going to go ambient, but we haven't.
And this is basically what I did at the Cobra Beach show. Same sound, everything.
Blah, 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 blah.
Hello. Really?
What?
My future wife is at the door saying, my tea is ready. God, I'm so cool. God, I'm cool. This is what happens in all like techno gigs.
I'm afraid Anson can't play because his tea's ready. Happens all the time. More often than you'd think. Well,
I am 7 minutes short of an hour, but
we might have to call it a day because we're out of time.
and that sounds like music to me. At least my little LED things have died. So let's end the set in time-honored tradition. Tons of reverb. Let's make the baby howl. Is trembling. Yeah. So there we go. 55 minutes of techno, which if you allow time for an overrunning DJ is an hour. I think you'll find in England, hours last 55 minutes. That's a standard thing. So thank you for your time. Thank you for hanging out with me and playing. I'm going to go get married now, but before I get married, I'm going to finish my video about the Jove, so please have a look at that. And I may or may not have time for one more thing. I'm thinking, I won't spoil it in case I don't do it yet, but I will do that thing that I'm thinking of doing, which involves the GoPro and my head. So thank you everyone for your time. Please be safe. If you're on the southeastern coast of the United States, I hope you're in your basement. Get in your basement. Be safe. I love you all. Now I'm going to go over here and stop it.